What is up, Prealgebra? This is lesson 83. Our objective is, how do you calculate the probability of dependent events? Dependent events are events where the probability of one depends on the outcome of the other. So, like, example 1 here is an example of a dependent event. And I'll explain that a little bit more as we go through it. 2 8th graders and 1 7th grader want to go on the trip, but only 2 students will be selected. If their names are drawn at random, what is the probability that 2 8th graders will get to go? So realize there's 3 names, and depending on whose name gets pulled out first will then affect the probability of how the next one will be able to go. So realize there's 3 people that want to go. There's an 8th grader, there's a second 8th grader, and there's a 7th grader. So this is like the first pick. And then based on that, there's going to be a second pick. So the second pick, if they picked this 8th grader first, it could either go to the second 8th grader, or it could go to the 7th grader second. Right, so this would be 8, 8, or this would be 8, 7, the 2 that are picked. If this 8th grader got picked first, it could go to the other 8th grader, or it could go to the 7th grader. So this would be 8th, an 8th, this would be an 8th, 7th, and if they picked the 7th grader first, then it would either go to the 8th grader, or the other 8th grader. So it'd be 7th grader and 8th grader, 7th grader and 8th grader. So notice our favorable outcomes are the one that have both 8th graders is just this one and this one. And also notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different possible outcomes. So my probability here would be 2/6, which is the same thing as 1/3, which is approximately 33%. 33.3 repeating percent, but you get the basic idea. Okay, so the probability of the second one is different than the probability of the first one. And I guess we'll explain this more on the next page as well. The probability of the first 8th grader being picked, there's 2 out of 3, right? Because there's 2 8th graders and there's 3 people being picked. And assuming that the first person drawn was an 8th grader, then that means there's 2 people left, and one of them is an 8th grader. So the probability of the second one being picked is 1/2. So this kind of illustrates the multiplication rule of events A and B that are not independent, which are what we call dependent. So not independent means that they are dependent. So if you want to find the probability of dependent events, you take the probability of A when it's under the initial conditions, and you multiply it by the probability of B under the new conditions. So let's try one more, kind of using this concept. Alright, so example 2 says a bag contains 2 white marbles and 3 blue marbles. If two marbles are selected, what is the probability of selecting 2 marbles if the marbles are selected A with replacement and B without replacement? So let's just make sure that we understand the difference here. Under A, what they're going to do is they're going to select a marble, they're going to look at it, they're going to replace it back into the bag, and they're going to select another marble and look at that. B says without replacement, meaning that they're going to pull a marble out, they're going to look at it, they're going to sit on the table, and they're going to pull out another marble and look at it. So what's the probability that 2 blue marbles will be selected? So following this, part A is actually what we call independent. They don't affect each other because the marble is being replaced. So there are 3 blue marbles and there are 5 marbles in total. And since it got replaced, the second time they draw, there's going to be 3 blue marbles and 5 marbles in total. So the probability is going to be 9 over 25, which is equal to 36% probability. For part B, it's a little bit different because the probability of the second one is going to be different because there's not going to be as many marbles in there. So for part B, the probability of drawing a blue marble the first time, since there are 3 blue marbles and there are 5 marbles in the bag total, probability of drawing that first blue marble is going to be 3 out of 5. But the second time, notice since we pulled one out and set it on the table, now we're only going to have 4 marbles in the bag. And if we assume that the first one was favorable, meaning that we drew a blue marble out, that means I no longer have a blue marble in there, which means that there are 2 blue marbles left in the bag, and there's 4 total. So the probability of this without replacement is going to be 6 out of 20. 6 out of 20, which comes out to be 30%. So notice there is a difference. If you're able to put it back in there, then that increases your probability to 36%. But if you don't put it back in, then you just have a 30% chance. Feel free to watch this again if you need. Your homework assignment is on page 560. You're going to do the practice set, all of them from lesson 80. That's right, from lesson 80. And then 9 more of your choice. Good luck, guys.